Hello, good morning. Welcome to AARP Coffee Chat. I'm Rick Gibson, AARP Fraud Watch volunteer, and we have a special guest this morning, Miss Kelle Slaughter from the Identity Theft Program Manager for the Federal Trade Commission. Good morning, Kelle. It's nice to have you today.
Good morning, Rick. Thank you for inviting me to join you today.
Well, you are welcome. I might tell you that Kelle currently serves as the Identity Theft Program Manager for FTC, but she's also responsible for creating and implementing the agency's coordinated strategy to combat, investigate, and help consumers avoid and recover from various forms of identity theft. Prior to joining the FTC, Kelle was Director of Investigations at the Better Business Bureau serving North Central Texas, where she initiated and conducted investigations, led a multi-agency law enforcement task force, and gave presentations to consumers, businesses, and law enforcement. Before joining the Better Business Bureau, Kelle spent almost a decade working for the Texas Office of the Attorney General Consumer Protection Division as an investigator supporting enforcement actions initiated by the division. I have to say that's a pretty impressive resume, Kelle, but I think I'd like to start by asking you exactly what the Federal Trade Commission is and what it does. I think I know something about it, but I'm not positive. So if you could maybe make me better informed.
No problem, Rick. That's a great question, actually, because a lot of people don't know that the FTC is the nation's consumer protection agency. Our job is to protect you against deceptive and unfair business practices. And we do that in a number of ways. We're a law enforcement agency, so we investigate and we sue companies and individuals that violate the law. We also educate businesses about their responsibilities and educate people about their rights.
Wow, that sounds like a pretty big job. And your specialty is identity theft, I understand.
I am an investigator by trade, but I am the identity theft program manager. I will explain to you how all of these kind of mix together because
Yeah.
unfortunately, when we're looking at scams and such, it can result in identity theft.
So while we're speaking of identity theft, maybe you could give me and our audience some kind of an idea of how big a problem is identity theft in Kansas, and is it growing, or do we have it under control, or how are we doing with identity theft?
Well, in state of Kansas for 2020, we haven't gotten the results for 2021 yet because we're still in it. But in 2020, we did receive over 43,000 reports of identity theft from those uh, who live in Kansas. That is an increase, and a lot of that increase came from some of the changes that we experienced with the onset of the pandemic. What we've
I
noticed, go ahead.
I'm sorry, I have heard that the pandemic has really had an effect on the number of fraud cases in general, not just identity theft, but the number of identity theft cases seems to have increased during the pandemic, partly because of the isolation we experienced, of the more frequent use of the internet that we experience. The combination of things seem to be a perfect storm for the incubation of identity theft. And it sounds like that's true.
You're
Do
absolutely right.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt
No,
you.
you're
Do you
okay.
have any kind of a tip or a suggestion for people to keep them from experiencing identity theft?
Absolutely. Well, Rick, I want to go back on something that you said. You are absolutely correct when you say that we unfortunately had a open door for scammers out there if we didn't know how to protect ourselves in the beginning. And in fact, last week, the Federal Trade Commission released our annual report to Congress regarding protecting older adults in the marketplace. And among other things, we looked at fraud losses,
Hmm.
money, and we found that people 60 years and older reported losing money to tech support scams, to sweepstakes scams, and to emergency imposter scams. They
Mm,
actually reported losing money to those scams more often than adults aged 20 to 59. But the
wow.
biggest scam for all adults, however, was romance scams. In 2020, we were told that there was a record loss of over $304 million to romance scams. And about 139 million of that were made up from older adults. That's up 50% from last year. We,
Do you
I'm
have
sorry.
do you have any ideas of your own about what might have caused such an increase, especially amongst the older population?
Absolutely. The idea is, we call them romance scams because we think about people going out onto dating sites and such in order to find that special someone. But we also categorize romance scams as those people finding like-minded folks that they actually connect with. So with the isolation that we experienced during the pandemic, it is very likely that these numbers increased just because people were looking for like-minded people that they befriended. And unfortunately, that person was a scammer, an imposter who was pretending to be there looking for the same thing, but actually seeking to either steal your identity or steal
Mhm.
money or even both.
Wow. So let's get back to some tips that we could give people on avoiding not only romance scams, but scams altogether, especially identity theft kinds of things. What kind of things can people do to proactively take care of themselves?
Well, first of all, we want everyone to recognize how to spot a scam. You would be approaching an imposter scam by someone who wants to pretend to be someone that you trust or affiliated with an entity that you trust. And they'll likely call you, they will email you, they'll text you. However, they make contact with you, a big red flag is when they eventually ask you for money. And when they
Mhm.
ask for that money to be sent to them by wire transfer or prepaid gift cards, those are untraceable. They know they can get the hands on the cash quickly and remain anonymous. Those are red flags for you. Sometimes, again, imposter scams can result in direct financial loss or identity theft. So, in order to protect yourself, in general, you really want to make sure that you're never sharing your personal information with someone who calls you out of the blue. You never share your credit card information or your bank account information, especially not your social security number with someone you don't know. If you happen to meet someone online, you can go through and kind of investigate them to make sure that you know who they are. Um, and talk to people about your new relationships that you forge on the internet. We are we have I'm sorry, we have tips on our website. Well, the website that you're seeing right now is reportfraud.ftc.gov, is actually for you to report if a scammer has approached you, if they have tried to get money from you after saying, "Oh, I love you," and then all of a sudden have a medical emergency or a travel expense that they didn't expect, and they're asking you to fund it. You can
Mhm.
report that to us there. But we also have tips to help you to protect yourself at identitytheft.gov. And at identitytheft.gov, you will also learn how to, or we'll suggest to you how to navigate avoiding losing identity or losing your money to tech support scammers. That's another way that scammers have found in this pandemic that they will be able to get to people. They seek to scare you that something is wrong with your computer when there's actually nothing wrong with your computer. They'll
Mhm.
ask to remote in so they can put malicious software on your computer and steal your identity. Or they may just want you to buy a product that you don't even need in order to fix a problem that may not even be there.
Yeah.
So yeah, we tell you, the tech support scam, a tech support company that is legitimate. will not call you to tell you there is a problem on your computer. They will not send you a pop-up that says, call this number for help. But if you believe that I'm sorry, go ahead, Britt.
I just started to say, I think that's probably good advice for any calls that are initiated by someone else. I can't think of a case where someone legitimate will call you out of the blue and tell you either that your bank account is overdrawn or that your social security the number needs to be identified, or or your computer is bad. I think if you get a call from someone that is unexpected, I think it's an immediate cause for suspicion. It seems to
Absolutely.
me that being aware of who you're doing business with is probably the key to the whole thing.
You are absolutely correct, Rick. If you don't know the person, proceed with caution.
Can you give us some examples of things that have happened in Kansas that shouldn't have happened, but they did?
Well, I can give you one thing that actually kind of plagued the entire world, but in Kansas, we received over 38,000 reports of this particular issue, and that is government benefits fraud. It actually was the number one type of identity theft reported to FTC last year, not only in Kansas, but across the United States.
Wow.
What happens there is that unemployment insurance identity theft occurs when an imposter files a claim for unemployment insurance using another person's name and personal information. It might surprise you to know that this is not a new scam, but in 2020, we saw an astonishing 2,900% annual hike in the number of identity theft reports in which people said, my information was used to apply for and to receive government benefits such as unemployment, and I never filed a claim. Payments that were made as a result went to
Exactly
that
the same
identity thief.
thing happened to my wife. Exactly the same thing. She didn't file a claim. She had no intention of filing a claim. She was not unemployed, but there was a claim filed in her name. And it was really quite a hassle to get that sorted out because she kept getting letters about what she needed to provide and how she needed to go about her business, which I'm assuming were all traps to get her personal information one way or another.
I'm not sure exactly what she could have been receiving at the time. I mean, the trend kind of shifted throughout as we were all trying to learn. Each state was trying to learn how to handle this particular issue.
Mm-hmm.
But I can tell you now that to recover from this type of identity theft, you want to contact the unemployment benefits office where the claim was filed and your employer immediately.
Mm-hmm.
Be sure to keep a copy of any confirmations that you get, and consider a credit freeze after something like this happens, because that is an additional step you can take. Whereas if the person has your social security number, it actually blocks them from opening new accounts and such on your credit. With, you have a little bit of a, you have to work a little bit in order to be able to apply for new credit yourself, but it protects you if you have this credit freeze in place. It's one of the most important things that you can do.
Right.
One of the things, though, going forward, because we're so close to tax season, there will be some people who may receive a 1099-G showing that they got unemployment benefits over the past year when they actually never received anything. Because as I mentioned, the thief got it. If you or someone else you know gets that form showing that you received unemployment benefits that you never got, report it to the state unemployment benefits agency, and they can do a corrected form for you. There's a little bit more guidance about that on irs.gov.
Uh-huh. Well, that's a good tip because if I got a 1099 from someone that I never received money from, I'm not sure I'd know what to do next. But thank you for that information. That's very, very important information, and I'm happy to have you share it. I know that AARP has done considerable research on the area of fraud, and there are those of us who work in that area all the time, trying to keep people informed, and trying to inform ourselves. Uh, One of the things that we're focused on is that the research that AARP has done fairly well narrows this down to emotion, environment, and exposure. We call that the three E's. And the the heightened emotional state that every single scammer tries to put people in is the major problem with all of fraud, is that when things happen and you're in a highly emotional state, you really don't make wise decisions. So I think that probably sums it up pretty well, is that we're not in control of our emotional state. And so we have to watch for the other things that we can control and just be aware. Just being aware is half the battle, knowing that I didn't solicit this call. I didn't ask these people to contact me.
Mhm.
You know, if you're aware of that, you've got half the battle done. So I would like to say thank you so much for joining us this morning. I always find fraud and identity theft an interesting but arresting sort of topic, because I work in the field as well. But it's really, really nice to have a true expert with us. And thank you for sharing the statistics and the other things. And thank all of you out there who joined us today. We really appreciate it. We hope you tune in every Wednesday morning at 10 o'clock for coffee chat. And some days, most days, you'll have Andy Bozarth, but today you have Rick Gibson sitting in, and I thank you a lot. Bye-bye.